Welcome to Decoded by Christina. This is usually a series that focuses on HTML and CSS, but this video is going to be a little bit different. Back in 2016, I had this idea to do another regular series, Coffee with Christina. People often ask me for advice about getting into tech, freelancing, and just general stuff about working in the industry. But since I can't meet up with every single person that asks me out for coffee, my plan was to do semi-regular live streams where we could all have a coffee date together and I could answer a bunch of questions at once. Unfortunately, I ended up only doing 2 live streams before other work and life stuff took over. But I was cleaning out some old files and found these recorded sessions and realized that people are still asking the same questions. So I've decided to re-upload them. Just keep in mind, these were recorded in 2016, so the video and audio quality isn't the best, but the content is still relevant. You can also check out the video description below to see what questions were asked. I hope you enjoy this very special episode of Decoded by Christina. Hey everybody! Alright, so if you can hear me okay, say hi in the chat. So I was serious about making the little coffee. I even went and got a fancy new cup. See my double-walled cup here? So I would love to know, before we get started, where everybody is calling in from. So why don't you let me know in the chat, because we got some folks here where I can't see your name. So how about in the chat, why don't you introduce yourself and let us know what your name is and where you're calling from. And also, just a little housekeeping, the way this screencast works is you can just ask your questions at the bottom of the screen, right underneath the video. You can type in a question there, or you can even just upvote questions that you have that are similar to something else that someone else asked. So there's a few that I posted already that I got an email. If there's something that you also want to know, feel free to type in a new one or just upvote something that's already there. So while you guys are kind of all coming in and settling in, please feel free to use the chat and chat with each other. Let me know if you can't hear me or anything like that. So before I get into the questions, I just wanted to introduce myself a little bit. So some of you I know and some of you I don't. So I just want to let you know a little bit about my background so that maybe that'll help you to figure out what best questions I can answer as well. Hi, Tony. So my name is Christina. I guess you probably know that already. So I've had about 10 years in the tech industry. So this year actually marks 10 years. So I was in school back in 2006. So I went to Seneca here in Toronto, and it was a 14-week program. So this was before all the boot camps kind of came out, but it's a similar style. So a 14-week full-time program. Focusing mostly on front end, so HTML, CSS, and at that time, Flash, because that was 2006. Flash, JavaScript, Photoshop. That's pretty much it. A little bit of PHP. And then I started working. My first job actually wasn't a developer job. I was on the content team. So I did a little bit of coding, but it was mostly using CMS. And so I was freelancing on the side to sort of make a little extra money and also gain extra experience. And then I was there for a couple years, and then I went on to move on to my first agency job at Razorfish. I was there for about a year, and then I moved on to Tihan and Lack. So I was there for about 2 years. So those were my agency jobs. And then after that, I went to a software company and I worked on the in-house app. So that was my first senior level job. So I managed, headed up the front end development and designed the front end architecture. I've also been teaching for about 4 years. So I taught at Humber College. I taught at HackerU Bootcamp. And my last job was I was the director of curriculum for Ladies Learning Code, all here in Toronto. So as the director of curriculum, I created all of the workshops and part-time program content, and I was teaching, and I was also training the instructors. So I've had a lot of different kinds of jobs in this industry. So what I was finding that a lot of people were just asking me questions about how do I get started, where do I go, how do I find the job that I want, all those sorts of things. So unfortunately, I can't always meet for these individual coffee dates. So I thought it would be nice to just get us all here together, and that way you can sort of meet other people and stuff as well, and hopefully I'll be able to answer some questions. So that's me in a nutshell. Feel free to ask anything else that you want to know about me that I might have forgotten to mention. Okay, so I'm seeing some questions. So we have some questions in the queue already. So remember, I'll answer as many as I can, or you can just upvote the ones that you want to know. So I'm just going to go ahead and let's start with I'm going to start with the first question. So I'm going to put that on the screen. Okay, so the first question is, did you pick up the fundamentals of everything you needed to know from your Seneca course, or were there pieces, maybe PHP, you had to learn a different route? Okay, so this question I think is really, especially if you are considering or have come from a boot camp, I think this will be really relevant to probably your experience. Because at Seneca, like I mentioned already, it was a 14-week program. It was full time, so it was Monday to Friday. And the way it was set up was from 9 to 12, we would have classes, and then the afternoon would just be lab time, and we'd work on our projects together. So I did not learn everything I needed to know, but I learned enough to get started. And even if you do take a longer program, like let's say you go to a 2 or 3 year college program, the nature of this business is you're going to be constantly learning. So what I find in my experience of just teaching in different environments, so teaching in a college, teaching in a boot camp, and teaching one-day workshops, you do get a different kind of audience. But at the end of the day, it's students kind of all, it's really like it's where you learn is more of a personal decision. So that's another question I get to is, should I go to a boot camp? Should I go to college? That's really um, your personal decision, really like what kind of environment do you want to learn in, cost, time, that sort of thing. But in terms of picking up the fundamentals and learning everything you need to know, you're not going to learn everything you need to know just because there's just so much to learn. So you will learn enough to get started, but you have to get comfortable with the idea that you're going to be constantly learning. That's just sort of how it is. Sometimes I'll hear students say to me, I'm going to get to the point where I'm just going to be able to type out a program and I won't have to Google anything and I'll just be able to write it the first time around. That's never going to happen. When you get more experience, you just get faster at problem solving, but then you find bigger problems to solve. So just kind of get comfortable with the idea that you'll never know everything. But again, at Seneca, for me personally, I did know enough to be able to get my first job. So yeah, it was mostly HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. PHP we touched on just a little bit. Um, but the thing so HTML and CSS are not programming languages. So the syntax is a little bit different, but JavaScript is a programming language. And I find that in terms of picking up new programming languages, as long as you know one pretty well, the structures are pretty much the same. So as long as you get to know one pretty well, you'll be able to learn a new one a little bit faster. So um, if you feel overwhelmed in terms of like, oh, I don't know what to learn, PHP, Angular, React, all that stuff, if you get pretty good at one, you'll be able to pick up the other ones a little bit better. So my answer to that question is no matter what program you choose, you're not going to learn everything, but you will learn enough to get started, and you have to sort of be committed to continuing to learn. So continuing to learn in the sense of maybe taking a workshop or maybe a couple online courses, or maybe you just have a pet project on the side just to kind of help keep you working and in the mix. Because sometimes at your jobs, you might not be able to do the kind of work that you want to do. So you might have to have a little side project just to kind of to be able to keep up and experiment and such. Okay, so I hope that kind of answered that question. Okay, so Will, your question has been moved to the top. So let's see. How long, so Tony, I see you in the chat, how long it took to learn backend development. Okay, so let me answer that quickly and then I'll go back to Will's question. So I actually never really learned backend. So I decided that my focus was going to be front end just because that's what I enjoyed better. So that it is possible for you to, you don't have to know all the different languages either. There are some people that go front end only, which is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript usually. And then there are people who do back end only. And then there are people who are full stack, which means they kind of do it all. And even within those categories, you can even specialize in that. There are people who are only JavaScript developers. There are people who are only Angular developers. So for me, it was more about learning enough about backend so that I can be able to talk to the backend developers and to be able to understand how the structures work. But myself, I don't actually write it just because it's not something that I personally enjoy doing. I like the visual aspect of front end code. So that's my answer to that. Okay, so Will's question, what are some ways that help you manage multiple projects on a daily basis? Example, full-time job to freelance gig, personal life. Okay, this one. And I sigh because it's a constant struggle for me. How do you get into the mindset of a particular project? So, my whole career, up until the last 2 months, I've always had some kind of side gig. So, in terms of how to manage all of that, especially when I was starting out, I think I was also just really hungry. So, when you're starting out, you just want to do everything because A, you're excited, and B, you just want to get all the experience. Or another reason why I always ended up juggling so many projects is I was always afraid of losing an opportunity. So I would say yes to everything. It's funny because when I'm going through it, I just see one deadline at a time, and it's almost like I don't have time to be tired until I finish. And then I'm like, nah. So I think again, it's also your personality as well, right? So know what you can, where your stopping point is. I would say if you're working full time, I would not take on more than one side gig at a time. And so let's say you're working full time and then you're also freelancing. Don't answer your freelance emails at work, at your day job. You want to be able to focus on the task at a time. So what I would do is I would tell my freelance clients like, hey, I work full time as well, so I can only respond to your requests on the evenings, on the weekends. If that's going to be an issue, then please let me know, and then maybe I can refer to you to someone else. You want to set those boundaries right at the beginning so that they're not constantly emailing you during the day waiting for some kind of response, and then now you're kind of split into what you're paying attention to. You don't want your day job to slip as well. So you want to keep that separate. And plus, I mean, a lot of employers don't want you to do that. So you don't want to do that on company time anyways. So I would say if you're balancing a full-time job and doing freelance, let your freelance people know that you are unavailable during the day. And that way you don't feel guilty for not checking your emails. They know not to bother you during the day or not to expect a response during the day. So you can just tell them that, because this is something you're working on the side, it will probably take a little bit longer and you can't be available during your work hours. But that doesn't mean that you won't. You can still give them the full attention to their projects, just at a different time of day. And so I find that segmenting my time is really useful for being able to balance multiple gigs. So yeah, up until I went completely freelance, which is 2 months ago. Yes, Hazel, gotta set boundaries. I had always had 2 to 3 gigs at the same time. So I've definitely done a lot of this. So I experiment also a lot with a lot of different tools as well to keep me on track. So my current one that I'm using right now is called Asana, and it's just a project and management tool. So no matter what you use, what you need is you need to find a way to organize your different tasks. So whether it's on paper, whether it's something like Asana, I also use Todoist. Let me put some of this stuff in the chat as well. So I don't have the websites off of the top of my head, but that's what it's called. Todoist is a to-do list. Asana actually took me like 2, 3 days to set up the way I wanted it to. I think that might have to be its own webinar, but once I got it set up, I really love it. There's another one called Workflowy, which is more of like just a free-flowing to-do list. So what I would do is I would make a list of all my tasks for each project. And then I would set due dates to each of the tasks. And then I would go into my iCal or my Google Calendar. And then let's say I have a project that's due in 2 weeks. I list out the major blocks of tasks for that. And then I look on my calendar, I set the due date, and then I look at the 2 weeks in between. And I do this on my calendar, and that way I can see if I have any meetings or any places I have to be at the time too. Because if I'm thinking, oh, I have 2 weeks to work on X project, but then, let's say you have a dentist appointment, you have a meeting you have to go to, then all of a sudden your Thursday's completely shot because you'll be going around town doing errands and appointments and stuff. So you don't have that full week to work on it anymore. So looking on a calendar really helps me. And then I'll actually block off hours during the day and say, okay, on Monday from 9 to 12, I'm going to work on X project. And then I'll break for lunch. And then from 12 to 5, I'm going to work on X project. And that way you can segment in your mind and focus on one thing at a time. Whether if you're working sort of the typical 9 to 5, then obviously you're going to be segmenting those blocks in the evening. And I also like to give a buffer. So if I say I might block out 4 out of 5 days. And then I'll have my fifth day as like to do all the things that I didn't finish. So maybe I'll block out my tasks from Monday to Thursday, and then I won't have anything planned for Friday. And then that way, it gives me a buffer because I am still terrible at estimating my time, and I think we all are a little optimistic when we estimate our time. I don't know, has anyone here ever finished anything faster than they expected? I always take much longer. So, also, while we're on the topic of that, when you're estimating how long you think it's going to take for you to do something, add on at least a third to a half. So if you say, oh, I think this will take me 10 hours, add on a third to half because you'll probably need it. Um, Also, the other thing about setting boundaries is cutting out things that might distract you, like emails. So I usually segment certain times that I will just answer emails. So first thing in the morning, I'll look at my emails. I'll give myself a maximum of an hour to answer emails. Whatever doesn't get answered in that hour, I'll wait to the next block. So I check in the morning, first thing in the morning. I usually check sometime in the afternoon, usually while I'm eating lunch, something easy, and I can kind of just scroll through my emails. And then I'll check once more at the end of the day. And that way you're not every time you get a notification, you're not, yep, all social media notifications. Yes, so Janet is a good one. So it's back to just sort of the idea of segmenting your mind, right? You pick your task and you just do it. And then you can use smaller blocks for those smaller tasks like checking email. So I use a Pomodoro method too. I don't know if anyone's heard of that. So especially when I'm not feeling focused, if I'm like, oh, let me see what's on Twitter, let me go to my fridge and see what's in there. So what I do, yeah. So what I do is I'll put a timer on for 25 minutes and I'll pick a task that I need to work on. Because you can focus on anything. Oh, it doesn't work for you? Oh man. Okay. So maybe you have to pick like shorter time periods. So I find that 25 minutes works for me because it's just long enough for me to actually be able to do something, but it's not so long that I feel like there's people waiting for me to answer a question or something. So for me, 25 minutes is a sweet spot. I tried an hour and I find that's a little bit too long. So 25 minutes, focus on one thing. I don't check emails. I don't just like suddenly think that I'm hungry and I need to go to the kitchen and as soon as I feel like, oh, I'm going to check Twitter, I look at my timer and I'm like, okay, I have 10 minutes left in my 25 minutes. I can continue on this task for 25 minutes. I use this other site called timer-tab.com. So it's just a very simple timer. I put 25 minutes in, I have it up on my screen so that I can see it, and I watch it count down. And so anytime I start to feel myself trying to find that excuse to stop working, like, oh, I need a glass of water, or look at my emails, oh, I got a notification, I got a text message. You look at that timer and you're like, that anything can I'd say 99% of things can wait 25 minutes. And then I take a 5 minute break. And during that 5 minutes, I'll go get the water. I'll take a peek at Twitter. I might peek at my email just to see if there's anything important that came in, but I won't really go into my email because I have my little segmented times for that. So morning, somewhere in the afternoon, and end of day. And then everything just waits. I think it's just like, especially when you're starting out, you have this sense of like, I want to please everybody. I want to be a good worker. I want to be available. I want to do all these things. But if you're spreading yourself thin, then you're actually not really able to kind of give the best of yourself. So being able to segment these times. And it kind of sounds a little bit silly, but you know, people can wait. So like people can wait a day for something. So in terms of emails, I try to respond within 24 hours or up to 48. So with emails, I try to be on top of that. But again, people can wait an hour. They can wait 25 minutes. And I find with the Pomodoro method, especially if I'm just feeling unmotivated that day, sometimes putting that 25 minutes on tricks me into working. So my 25-minute timer will go off and I'm like, nope, I'm in the zone. I don't need that 5-minute break. I'm just going to keep working. So I'll put another 25 minutes on. But sometimes it's nice to have that timer on the other hand is to remind you to take a break because you don't want to sit there and work for 3 hours straight either. So even if it's just a 5-minute break for you just to get up, look around, look away from your computer, I find that that works really well for me is to try that Pomodoro method. So if you haven't tried it and you are going to try it, let me know how that'll work for you. And I just want to go a little bit more into that. So personal life passion projects. I mean, this is actually one of the reasons why I even did this chat is so the passion projects idea is, you know, you want to do something because you care, right? So whether it's a project, whether it's meeting up with someone for a coffee date, these are things that you do because you care, but you don't get paid for them. So paid work kind of always comes first. So that means your passion projects uses up whatever free time you have, free energy you have, and it's easy to wear yourself thin because you care so much that you don't think about what it's doing to you. So it goes back to the idea of setting boundaries and stuff as well, right? So I think you have to just, I don't want to say use the word selfish because I don't think it's selfish, but just be very mindful of how you're feeling and don't feel bad about saying no to things that you just can't do. You can say no nicely. I have a few things that I say if I just don't have the time to do it. I can't put the effort into it, and I'll just say something like, "Hey, it's my goal for this year to make sure that I'm very mindful of how I spend my time and being able to put in the best work that I can. So unfortunately, I just can't commit to this project at this time." So you have to kind of take care of yourself first. Just like when you fly on an airplane and they go through the all the emergency stuff, they always say to put on your mask first, right? So you want to make sure you're okay first, right? Before you can help other people. All right, next question. So what major routes to learning, school, independent, workshops, work training, etc. Did any of these work for me? So I like to do pretty much a little bit of everything because I think if I use one route, I get bored. So after I finished my program, I never went back to school officially um, because, well, I finished my degree first. So I actually have my degree in psychology and communications, which didn't seem to make sense when I first started working as a developer, but it became really handy once I started teaching. So I haven't gone back to school because of that. Because after I finished my degree, I was just like, ugh, I don't want to be in school for another 2, 3 years. Plus, I started university not that late. I was 21. So when I graduated from school and then I finished the Seneca program, I was about 26 or 27 at the time, which is looking back now is not old, but at the time it felt old and I was like, I don't want to be in school for another few years. I want to start working. But I did take I took like one evening class on Illustrator once, where it's just like once a week for a few weeks, something like that. I've done the online video courses as well. So for me, I just like to sort of do a little bit of each. Just I'll watch a video just to get a general idea of what it is that I'm trying to learn, and then I'll try to just build a little pet project. So for me, I find that it's just a mix of a little bit of formal instruction just to give me the basics and then actually applying it because it's very different to learn how to do something and to actually use it in real life. Because when you're in school, you learn how to do these perfect projects. You make a website. So you start with your index.html and code straight from scratch, or you're doing a WordPress site and you get a fresh install. But when you actually go and work somewhere, you're working on a project that 10 different people have touched already. Maybe it's old. Maybe you're trying to figure out how to write new code on top of old code, and it's never the perfect project that you learn in school. So I think you kind of have to have a mix of just hands-on experience as well as a little bit of formal instruction. I think again, the learning routes that you choose there's so many different ones that it's really up to you again to figure out which environment you like the best, because it's all of just about what works for you, because everyone's pretty much teaching the same thing. It's just how they teach it to you and what works best for you. And back to what I was saying earlier, you just sort of have to get used to the idea that it's a constantly learning and just being comfortable with that. So I think I mentioned this, well, I've mentioned this a lot actually, but I think this was something I wrote about in my last newsletter where, so has anybody here heard of the term imposter syndrome? So you can say yes or no in the chat. So imposter syndrome is basically it's a term that was coined back in the 70s or 80s, I think, by a couple of psychiatrists. So a couple of you have heard of it, but I'll give a quick summary. So basically the idea is that every time you've achieved something, you start to feel like an imposter, especially the higher you go, because you feel like, oh no, I got here by luck. I'm not really that good. I'm not that smart. One day somebody will figure out that I actually don't know what I'm doing. So the thing that I don't like about that term, I like the term because it does help me to describe a lot of self-doubt that I've had throughout my career, but I don't like it when it's applied to learning, because the reason you're learning something is because you don't know how to do it. So you're going to have self-doubt, which is normal because you don't know how to do it. That's what learning is. So if you feel sort of that discomfort, it's actually okay, because you're feeling that discomfort because you haven't mastered something yet. And this industry, I find in particular, because things are changing all the time, that discomfort never really goes away. Um, so you almost have to just sort of embrace it. But where it might start to hurt you is if you don't celebrate your wins. So if you're learning something new and you're not feeling like, if you're feeling like, oh, I'm never gonna get it, that's normal. That's part of learning. But if you get that promotion at your job, then you need to celebrate that. Even if you do feel like, oh, I don't know if I can do this, that again is also normal. So that's just the discomfort of just doing something you haven't done before. So it's a bit of a balancing act to kind of figure out, do I feel this way just because I just don't know it yet and I'm still learning, or do I feel this way because I'm not celebrating my wins? So it's a lot of self-reflection. And again, this is where I think my psych and communications degree is finally kicking in a little bit when I'm talking about learning and teaching and such. So yeah, so quick answer to that question is a little bit of everything, and testing out which route works best for you. But I will say that you should at least try to build something. You can only do theory for so long. You have to actually just make something. And then when you do make something, the first step is getting it to work. Second step is getting it to work better. So if you focus on like, oh, I have to build this little piece perfectly first before I can move on to the next step, you might get stuck there. So the more you write, the more you build, the better you will get eventually, but just get it to work first and then look at it again and say, okay, so it works, but I know it's a mess. Let me see if I can figure out how to make it work better, and then I'll give you a little bit more experience. Okay? We're just moving along here. How's everybody doing? Did you guys bring your coffee as well? I know we're not here together, but I thought it would be nice to at least have coffee together virtually. So, Felicia, you are up next. Let me see your question. So, it's only been 2 months that I've gone independent. How do you find it? What are the major struggles you're finding so far? So, my major struggle that I have every day is, um, did I make the right decision? Every day I think that, and every day I come to a yes still though. So my biggest struggle, okay, so the reason why I went independent, first of all, let me just backtrack this a little bit, because this is I think being independent is something that a lot of people want to do. A lot of people dream about it, but you have to be ready to do it. So I am in a very privileged position right now in my career to be able to just quit and just say, F it, I'm going off on my own. Whatever happens, happens. So it took me 10 years, personally, 10 years to get to a point where I could say that. So I'm very careful with the, quit your job and follow your dreams kind of advice, because not everyone's ready to do that yet. So the reason why I did it was, so as I was saying, I have 10 years in the biz, and I was starting to feel like I was giving my work away, if that makes any sense. You know, You work at a place and then you leave, and that work stays with them. So my first few jobs, I didn't really feel that way too much because I was working at an agency and it was sort of just, I don't know, I guess we were just working on client projects and stuff, and it was just like a project and you move on. But later in my career, especially when I started teaching, developing curriculum, and I was working at Ladies Learning Code, again, out here in Toronto. I think most people here are in Toronto, so I guess most people have heard of it. But so I was developing the curriculum for Ladies Learning Code, and I've also in the last couple of years been very become a really a bigger advocate for diversity in tech, just because it's something that I experience personally as well, and it's a very personal issue for me. So developing that curriculum and working for an organization like that, the work had become very personal. So for me to put that much energy into something that isn't mine, it just didn't feel right. So I thought, instead of putting all that energy for somebody else, and I don't really have any control over what happens to it, why don't I do that for myself? Right? So that was my main reason for leaving. And I think another reason why people like to go independent is it's nice to be your own boss, right? So it's nice to be able to pick and choose the clients you work with or the jobs that you take. So I would recommend that definitely have some money saved before you go, because money is the biggest factor. I would say I've taken jobs that I didn't really want because I needed the money, or I didn't quit because I couldn't afford to leave just yet. So me personally, it would have been nice to have a 6 month salary saved up, but I had three. I had about 3 months saved, but I couldn't wait longer just because I was ready to leave. And also, I didn't want to leave my employers hanging. So if I took longer than 3 months, we would have gotten to a point where I would have had to start working on other projects. And long story short, three for me was like bare minimum. So definitely have some money saved so that you don't make future decisions based on money. Because if you take a freelance project where your client is paying you cheap, for example, and you're like, oh, I know that this is a cheap client, but I need the money. The problem with that is, if you get a cheap client, they're going to refer their cheap friends, and you're going to be making cheap money forever. You don't want that. So if you have money saved beforehand, then you have a bit of, I guess, power and confidence in being able to turn down projects you don't actually want to work on. So again, how much you save is going to be up to you, whatever your personal threshold is. But I would say it would be nice to have six. You probably can get away with three. It depends on, your situation, but prepare for it beforehand. So my first mistake at my first job was I waited until I was fed up, like up to here, before I started looking for a job. And it was my first job, so I didn't really know people. So it took me almost a year to find a new job. So I was fed up. And then I had to be fed up for another year before I could find another job. So I always say is, when you feel that spark, even if it's just a little bit, you're like, I might not stay here. Maybe you're not unhappy just yet, you're not fed up, but you're like, there's a little part of me that feels like I might not stay here. Start to plan then. So whether it's going to meetups, just getting to know people, that's a major thing, is getting to know people. And I'm not really that social of a person. Like, I don't like to go to meetups. I don't like to go to events. I don't like to go to conferences. But my way of meeting people, which might seem weird, is I speak at conferences. So if I speak at a conference, then it makes me go to the conference. If I'm not speaking, then I don't want to go. So if I speak at a conference or a meetup, then it makes me go. And then also, being the speaker brings people to you. So then it makes it easier for me to actually meet people, because if I'm speaking, then there are people there who just want to come talk to me afterwards. So it makes it a little easier for me to kind of be in a social situation that way. And I know that's kind of scary to say, like, hey, if you want to meet people, why don't you just speak? So maybe I can talk about that in another question. But or basically find whatever makes you comfortable, but try to find a way to get to know people. So even if it's just Twitter, for example, I like to use Twitter, any other social channels. You can follow people on Twitter and engage with them to kind of get to know them, but of course, don't be too creepy. There are people who just follow Twitter, and just, you can see them trying really hard to get people's attention. So you want it to be natural. Actually, Hazel, is really good at this. Hazel is a former student of mine, and she had mentioned about how. So Hazel, I'm going to use your story here, and I think I got the details right. So basically, she was following an agency that she liked on Instagram and liking their pictures. Yep. And they liked her picture. So it was kind of a way to, like, they can kind of just see how she is. She can, if she likes one of their pictures, then they have something in common. And then it kind of turned into a thing where they kind of got to see her work. And that way you can post your own work as well. And then a bit of a relationship started from there. Yep. So with Instagram. So you can sort of nurture relationships naturally that way as well. Of course, all of these things take time, and there's so much marketing that you have to do as well. So I'm using this new. So I just started using this service called Buffer, which I really like. So I'm putting that in the chat. They have a free tool, so you can use that to schedule your social stuff. So like for my chat today, I just scheduled a whole bunch of tweets for a week from now, a week ago to 3 days ago to an hour before, and I can just schedule those tweets, and then I don't have to think about it because, and then I have this fear of being annoying. So it's like I tweet something once and I just expect like everyone's going to see it, but that's not usually how it happens. Engagement rate is really low actually. So I can have 1,000 impressions on one tweet, for example, but only 2% will actually click on the link, for example. So you have to kind of get used to talking about this all the time. So if you're out, just tell someone everything is a potential opportunity. So if you're out at a meetup, you meet someone and they say, "Oh, what do you do?" And then you can say, "Oh, actually, I've been freelancing. I just started freelancing 2 months ago. So what I do is I focus on small businesses and blah blah blah." And you kind of just give them that little pitch, and then they might say, "Oh, I actually know someone who's looking for a website." So you can turn all of these things into a potential opportunity just by just being able to talk about what you do and being able to be comfortable about it. So of course there's always that fine, hey Lisa, there's a fine balance between like being pitchy all the time and just being able to conversate about what it is that you do. So again, of course, that's also just kind of like how your personality is too. So don't try too hard, but also don't be shy to talk about what it is that you do, and make sure you have some kind of a buffer financially that you can't afford to turn down contracts you don't want to work on. So you want to be able to get the kind of clients you want as soon as you can and get the rate that you want. Now, if you have a client that you want to work with, but they just don't have as much money to spend, then you don't lower your rates. You just offer them less. So let's say they want a full scale website, but they have a small budget. You can say, hey, how about we just set up a landing page and a Twitter account? And then maybe in a year, if you're finding that you need more than that and you have some time to save up for a proper website, then we can talk about it again then. So you can still work with people with small budgets. You just have to offer less, because just think, I think people think that when you're doing freelance that there's some negotiation or something that you're supposed to be able to do, but your services cost what they cost. You don't go into McDonald's and say, "Oh, well, instead of 6 nuggets, can I have 4 for $2 instead?" Like, that's just not how it works, right? So either you order the combo or you order off the dollar menu, right? So don't try. I know it's easier said than done, but try not to lower your rates. What you do is you just offer them less services, but you still keep your rates. You try to find what works for them. And it's really scary, I will say it is, but yep, your rate is your rate. Um, and you also have to take into account that if they balk at your rates, they're telling you right now that they don't value you. You are telling them, this is how I value myself, and they're coming back and saying, no, I don't think that's right. So right there is telling you that's not a client you want to work with. If they come, good, yes. If they come back to you nicely, if they say like, oh, I really want to work with you, but unfortunately this is my budget, they're not they're not trying to make you lower your rates. They're just saying this is all I have to work with. So if that's all they have to work with, then that's not their fault. You can work around it. That's when you just offer them smaller services instead. So how do you know if your rates are too high or too low? Ugh, that's always a hard one too. So usually if they say yes too fast, I'm like, damn it, I should have asked for more. So, okay, your rate, think of it this way. So what a lot of people make the mistake of doing is, let's say I want to make 60,000 a year. And so I would take 60,000 divided by 12 months, divided by 40 hours a week, and I get X amount of dollars, right? That's what a lot of people do. You cannot do that as a freelancer. So if you're working full time, you get paid your 40 hours a week no matter what. Whether you go for an hour lunch break or a 15-minute lunch break, you get paid. Whether there's sometimes you have no work to do, so you're just goofing around for 2 hours, you still get paid. When you are freelancing, you only get paid when you do billable work. So you cannot charge the same amount. So what you do instead is, okay, if I sit back and I think as a freelancer, okay, I want to make 60,000 a year. How many hours a week do I think I'll actually be able to bill? So that's a bigger question. So, here's another tool I like to use. It's called Toggle. So Toggle is a timer tool. So anytime I start a new task, I press play. It records how long I'm working on a task, and it's really helpful to let you know how long you actually spend on stuff. So what I'm noticing now is, especially like I've always done a little bit of freelancing on the side, but now that I'm completely independent, I spend so much time doing non-billable stuff. The other day, I literally spent 5 hours writing emails. I don't get paid for any of that stuff. So let's say in a 40-hour work week, maybe the work that I'm doing in that week that's actually billable might only be 4 hours a day. So if that's only 4 hours a day, that's only 20 hours a week that I'm actually doing billable hours. So that's half of a regular 40-hour work week. So I haven't done the math. Let's say it's $25 an hour if I'm on a regular salary. That means I have to bill at least $50 an hour if I'm doing freelance because I have 20 hours of work that is not going to get paid for. So, and then you also have to think of like overhead costs. So no one's going to buy you a computer. No one's going to pay you for sick days. No one's going to pay you for those stat holidays. So you have to take all of that into account of what your rate's going to be. So if you're starting out, and I know it sounds super scary, when you're starting out, I find that people are like, oh, maybe $20, $25 an hour. That sounds pretty good, right? Because you're still doing that 20 times 40 hours a week calculation. But you should probably start out at least 50. Chrometa? Oh, I'll check that out. So if you're not looking at the chat, Felicia just suggested Chrometa for tracking time. Yeah, so if you're freelancing, I would say at least $50, and that's not even a lot, truthfully. If you're contracting, like sometimes people will charge a little bit less if they're contracting, if they know like, oh, I'm going to do a 3-month contract at a agency and it's going to be regular work, 40 hours a week. So sometimes folks might go a little bit lower, but even as a contract, you probably don't want to go 50. And 50 is actually, it sounds like a lot when you say $50 an hour, but it actually isn't. So someone with my experience, or let's say maybe even like 6 to 10 years in the biz, like $100 to $200 an hour. And I know that sounds crazy and like I wish I was rolling in the dough and I'm not. But you're not, because you're not making that 40 hours a week. So so in terms of figuring out your hourly, try to think of it as like, okay, what do I want my annual salary to be? And then that breaks it down to that hourly if you were to get paid 40 hours a week. And then think of it, okay, in an actual 40-hour a week, how much of that time will I actually spend on things that I can get paid for? So if again, you're actually only billing 20 hours a week, you got to double that rate, that hourly rate. And then there's also project-based or value-based pricing. So I don't like to tell clients what my hourly rate is usually, because then they get so fixated on the hour. They're like, what? $150 an hour? But they're not thinking of it as like, so let's say I do a lunch and learn, for example. I do an hour lunch and learn session somewhere. And I say, okay, for the lunch and learn, it's $200. And the person might think, $200 for an hour lunch and learn? That sounds crazy. Or maybe I say $400. But it doesn't take into account that the time I have to spend to commute to that place, or that I had spent 5 hours beforehand putting together the materials. So that's why I don't really like to think of it as an hourly rate when I'm telling the client. I'll say, this session costs this much. This project will cost this much. But when you're trying to come up with that final number, I guess you still have to sort of think about it in terms of hourly. You might think of it as like, okay, this is going to take me 20 hours, so 20 times 50, or whatever it is my hourly rate is. Um, then yeah, it is. But see, Felicia is saying 200 sounds low for a lunch and learn. So it also depends on who your client is, right? So that also helps you to pick out like who you want to work with. And that too, if you're working for, so let's say you're working for another freelancer, maybe they're a photographer or something. Their budget is going to be smaller than if you're contracting for an agency that has, 200 employees, right? So sometimes you can even change your rate based on who your client is. So the thing is like it's always changing. The good thing about it is you can set your rate to be whatever you want. But the bad thing is like, oh, okay, what is my rate then? So you have to think of it as like, what's the minimum amount of money that I need to be able to just eat and survive, and then add on a little extra, because you want to be able to do more than just survive, right? So Sujata says, is favors instead of money. Okay, so working for free or working for favors. What do you mean by favors? Like you're trading, so if I do something for someone, I think that's basically how you value your time too. If you have the time to do it, I wouldn't do stuff for free if I didn't think I got some kind of value out of it still and I had time for it. So for example, a friend of mine actually designed my logo for me, which would normally cost a lot of money. So if you work for a photographer, they say they can do something for you instead of me. Well, make sure that it's someone that you could trust, that you know that they can actually deliver for you as well. So I'll let you know again about, so how I got my logo and my branding design was by my friend Yvonne Caramoy. A little name drop there. So she's a designer, and I really loved her work, and so and she's a friend as well, so I know her very well. So I approached her about doing a logo and branding for me. And I was willing to pay her whatever she charged, but instead we changed services. So in exchange for creating my logo and branding, then I gave her my consulting services. So both of us, neither of us made money, but we didn't spend money either. So for us, it worked out because we both got something out of it. And then also, she's someone that I knew personally, so that I trusted her to be able to deliver. She trusted me to be able to deliver. And also, even though we know each other personally, because sometimes when you do stuff for friends and family, especially for free, that doesn't always work out. But I also knew that she was someone who respected me as a friend and a professional. So that was also really important too. So that's the scary part when you're doing stuff for favors or for free, is the person that you're doing it for, you have to know that they also still respect you as a professional and not try to take advantage of your services. Yep, exactly. So don't be afraid to say no to friends and family. you, you just tell them, hey, I don't go to your job and ask you to give me whatever you do for free. So that's your answer to that. Okay? All right, so Felicia, I hope that answered your question. That was a very long answer that sort of went all over the place. But basically, just remember what you got into it for as well. And as long as you make enough money to keep going, just keep going. So as a freelancer, I'm willing to make less money for now than, because I know if I know I could just go out there and get some kind of like senior dev job and make way more money than what I am projecting in my next 6 months. But as long as I make enough to keep going, um, I I feel like I need to just keep going. So if the money runs out, hey, then I might have to get a job. But as long as I have my 3 month savings, and then in my first month, I brought in enough money to say, okay, that's going to take me for another month. And then this month, I have a couple things in motion to bring in a little bit more money. So I have a little bit to feel like I can keep going another month. I can keep going another month. Um, but yeah, it's definitely challenging. And even on the days when I just feel like crap, when I'm like, oh, what am I doing? And this is wrong. And I compare, don't compare yourself to other people. That is also a big one. Don't look at someone else who is like 3, 4, 5 steps ahead of you and say, um, well, look at what they're doing and how come I can't do that? It's like because they have 4 years of experience. Yep, you can't do it. I literally did that. I'm going to share a little personal tidbit with you all today. I literally did that for this chat. I was like, oh, no one's signing up. No one's going to come. I go to these other webinars and there's like 600 people who've signed up. And I have so many things to say. How come people don't sign up for my workshops and whatnot? And then also remember, people are last minute. I had like more people sign up in the last 2 days than I did in the last 2 weeks. So I'm pretty happy with the turnout today. It's not 600 people, but I'm pretty happy that you all came out here today to spend this time with me. So I feel like this is a success already. So try not to compare yourself to people who are way ahead of you. And also, if you do choose to compare yourself to somebody, at least do it to someone you actually want to be like. So I find myself often comparing myself to people that I don't want to be like. So in order for me to be successful, like, thank you, Felicia. So in order for me to be successful, when I'm comparing myself to a person I don't want to be like, for example, I'll look at them and say like, oh, this person, oh, they're making so much money or whatever. And then I look at them and I say, well, if I wanted to go their route, I'd have to do these skeezy marketing practices that I don't want to do. I have to like exploit people along the way. I have to, all these things that I don't want to do anyway. So why am I even comparing myself to them? So there are people that I look up to that I say, I want to be like that someday. Because they're doing things that I want to do the way I want to do it. So I can look at them and say like, okay, I can at least look at that as like, here's an example of someone that I can aspire to be like, instead of wasting my time wondering why this person over here is more successful than me when they're doing things that I don't want to do anyway. So that doesn't make sense. So stay focused. That's why my hashtag is stay focused. That is something, my daily mantra. So keep as the task at hand. So Felicia, you keep going, I keep going, we all keep going, all right? Okay, so we are 2 minutes left, so let me just close up with this last question. Sorry, I didn't get to all of them, so maybe this means I have to just do another one, right? So I'm going to answer this last question and then we'll wrap up. All right. Okay, so Wes, what you got for me? Let's see. How do you know when you team partner with someone and when taking on projects above your skill level? Just go it alone, hope it turns out okay, or just say no, turn down opportunities. Okay, no problem. So when you team or partner with someone who is that person above your skill level, is that the question? Or is that person, okay, so the project is above your skill level. Is the team partner your client? Okay, so if the project is too hard. All right. Okay. So, hey, Dondi. Oh, thank you. So the question is, okay, so this kind of goes back to a thing I said earlier about the discomfort of learning and not knowing. So I do a lot of self-reflection if you haven't noticed already. So definitely I would say take a project that is above your skill level. But there's a but. Make sure that it's at least on the same path as your skills. So let's say, for example, I do front end. So I'm not going to take a project that requires a lot of backend because it's something that I just literally just don't know how to do and don't want to know how to do. So I know enough backend and programming to be able to talk to someone who does do it, and be able to work with them, but I wouldn't be able to do it myself. Let's say, for example, I don't know how to write Angular because I've never really tried it, but it is in the realm of front end code. I can write JavaScript. So in theory, I can take on an Angular project. So I wouldn't necessarily say no to that project because it's at least in the realm of what I can do and what I can learn to do. But you don't necessarily have to tell the client this, but you can just make sure that when you are scoping out the project, that you give yourself more time. So let's say a project normally takes you 4 weeks, for example. You can say this project will take 6 weeks instead. And you can't really bill them for the time that it takes to learn. That can be just your own personal. So the thing about taking projects that are above your current skill level is that's how you get pushed onto the next skill level. You'll never get better if you just keep doing the same thing over and over again. And sometimes you don't even think of what the next thing is until you have to do it. So if you're doing the same things over and over again, there's no new problems to solve. What I will do first is the client, like they might ask, can we add this feature? And maybe I don't know how to do that yet. So I'll do a quick search. Let's say they want to add, I don't know, a photo slider into the WordPress site, right? And then they need a photo slider, they have a WordPress site. Do a quick Google search, photo slider, WordPress site, and then you find some results. You're like, oh, I could totally do that. There's a bunch of plugins I could choose from. Sure, I've never done this before, but other people have. I know how to read. I can follow along these instructions. Or maybe they want like appointment calendar booking software onto their site. Again, do a quick Google search. Oh, look, there's tons of services, third-party services that I can integrate into a website. Yes, I have not done this before, but I can just follow the instructions. Or maybe you can even ask them if you can have a week to just scope out the project, and then that way it'll give you some time to do a little bit of research first, just to see if it's something that you think you'd be able to learn eventually. And so a little bit of research, make the project timeline just a little bit longer to give yourself a little time to learn. And yeah, so I would say definitely take it. But again, make sure it's at least in the realm of the things that you want to do, or else you might be in trouble if it's something that you just don't want to do or don't know how to do at all. Also, it doesn't hurt to have a partner too. Maybe you can split the profits with a friend, and then the two of you can work on it together, and that way you both get the experience too. Maybe you're really good at HTML and CSS and your friend's really good at JavaScript, and then that way the two of you can sort of work off each other and split up the work and stuff. That's another thing too. Share the love. Okay, so thank you so much for coming today. I'm really excited. I'm really happy that you all came here today to take this time with me. So if you want to stay in touch, thank you. You're welcome, Lisa. So if you want to stay in touch with what's coming up, my mailing list is at the top. I was about to point at my screen like you could see what I'm pointing at, but it's right above the chat screen. So I would love to do this again because there's definitely some questions I didn't get to. I do plan on having a freelancing focus talk as well. So maybe next time what I'll do is I'll have very specific topics instead, so that we can kind of stay focused on one thing. Because I think there's a lot of questions that we can go through. So I didn't get a chance to drink much of my coffee at all. It's still warm, so I think I'll finish this after the call. All right, you too. Have a great weekend, Hazel. Thank you, and everyone else too. Thank you all for coming. Bye, everybody. Enjoy your weekend.